these little trees wouldn't have been here. The farmers cleared the land, and they had this division, sometimes because they had pasture animals, sometimes because the other guy had pasture animals, sometimes because they simply wanted to divide the two. And they would put fences up, but they didn't have wire in those days. That would have been very expensive. So they made their own fences. They took cedar trees and they split them in long, thin rails. And they constructed a fence. And cedar trees don't rot. They're much more durable. And so because of that, they're a good choice for fencing. And some of them are still around 100 and 150 years later. Now what you would also do is when you cut the trees down and the stumps were pulled, the land still had a lot of rocks in it because of the glacial debris that's left over. And of course this gets in the way of the plow and the other implements that you use on the farm. So what they would do is they'd pull those out and they'd be laying in the field. They'd bring out a horse with a sled behind it called a stone boat. And they'd come along and they'd roll these stones onto the stone boat, then pull them over here to the fence line. And that's why you see all these stones lying here in the debris. And they're also behind you, up behind Mrs. R and all the way up the line. And the stones would help anchor the fence posts so you wouldn't have to dig as far and otherwise secure the fencing. Some places there were more stones than others. It simply depended on what you found. So you can keep an eye for that. And in Canada, because we had very little military action here, this is almost always because of the farmers' work. In the United States, especially in the mid parts of Virginia and so on, there was a great deal of fighting because of the American Civil War. And a lot of these are actually old fortifications. They changed everything at the time because it was a national tragedy that happened in the United States in the middle 1860s. So when you're in different places, it depends on what you're looking at. You've got to kind of know the history of the area. So these stone fence lines and the stone and the wooden split rail fences, there's different kinds of fences as well depending on how industrious the farmer was or how high he or she wanted the fence. If they had to build a fence that they couldn't put the post in the ground, they built the fence like a zigzag. That way it would support itself without having to be put in the ground. That was called a snake rail fence, and those were the easiest to build. But splitting rails themselves was very difficult, and you had to be fairly good, but many of these pioneers were good with an axe, so there was no real trouble to do that. Okay, now we've seen a number of birds already. There's a robin over there, I can hear him singing. And so what we have so far is 2 red-winged blackbirds, and we have a starling, we have a Baltimore oriole, and now we have the robin. Okay, and we'll see what else we can, that's a yellowthroat out there too, so there's a common yellowthroat. I can hear by the calls. Yeah. Okay, and as we go through the forest, we'll collect those names as well as we go through the day. Now, if you're quiet, you'll see more, because the animals, any animal that's easy to find, ends up on some other animal's menu. And so when you're yakking, that's fine, it's your choice, but what you'll find is you disturb everything, and by the time you get there, there'll be nothing there to look at. Okay? Any questions about the rail fence or anything else that we're doing up to now? Okay, well.